Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dawn of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 14, which is called The Trade. So we cut back over to Kavik this time. He is not meeting with Yangchen, at least yet. This time it's actually him finishing his mission, his errand from the earlier chapters. In that, let's not forget, he didn't steal the scroll, but on his way out, he did steal the envelope, and that hasn't really been brought back up in terms of does Yangchen know about it or what? What's going on here? So this is him delivering this envelope to Q, his information broker here. And along the way, we also get the first stage, at least, of some Kavik and Kalyan backstory, as well as just more. How does the rest of the kind of Water Tribe quarter treat Kavik and his family? So, interesting chapter. So, Kavik makes his way through Bin Again, it's really noted that suddenly the center of town has become a major place that if you want to stay out of trouble, you stay out of the center of town, because it's sort of people have gotten used to airing their grievances in the middle of town, and so you kind of want to stay away from there now. Like, things are building up. In Bin something has to change here. So it's this kind of clear-cut example of even though the Shangs clearly don't want to make any changes, the people have had enough, and they're going to have to do something one way or another. So interesting stuff there. So we see that he's heading to a tea house called the Golden Cloudberry. So he makes his way in there, sits down, and then you sort of see here that like Q here is not a particularly like skilled information broker, because they're trying to do this kind of handoff really stealthily, sneakily. And so what they do is like Kavik sits down on one place, and instead of Q just coming over casually talking to him and then just secretly exchanging the information, Q like sits down like behind Kavik, so they're facing away from each other. Which would be sort of fine in a crowded tea shop. But they're the only two people in the tea shop. So it's a little bit like, this is what we saw in the movies type thing. But like this is how they think it should be done. We just quickly cover some of the idea of, like Kavik is like, you knew where you were sending me. You knew it was the Avatar and you didn't tell me ahead of time. And he's kind of like, well, my logic was that it was probably the safest person I could have sent you to, because she's an air nomad Avatar. She wasn't going to have you killed. And look, you got out, no problem. And of course, this is where Kavik realizes that Q does not know the full extent of what happened. He doesn't know that, like, Yangchen sort of basically let him go. Doesn't know that Yangchen later came to his house to speak to him. So he kind of has the advantage here of being able to act like he just got in, got out, stole the envelope, and that's it. So he basically sort of hands it over. This is what he wanted here. And the payment, as was mentioned earlier, Kavik wants information on his brother. And so this is what Q says. But first, one interesting thing that Kavik says is just like, enough playing around. I just picked you over the Avatar, and she's a lot prettier. Tell me what I want to know. So another example of just either through the narration from Kavik's perspective or Kavik himself directly saying that he sort of finds Yangchen attractive. Now again, a lot of people are going to in this book highlight it's the YA book. Is it a romance? Is Yangchen Kavik a romance? And I think you can sort of see that up to now so far. There's potential for a romance. It's not that their relationship is so, set in stone that it can never be that way. But it doesn't seem like that is really an aim or an intent of the book to do that. And I think part of that is just that Yangchen does tend to have very few people she trusts, doesn't have other companions with her. So for now, at least, it feels like it's more focusing on the idea of kind of Kavik being her first companion of her own age. And it might go in that direction, because it does seem like the two kind of like and remember each other, because it's sort of significant that like Yangchen prevented herself from having one of these past life possession panic attacks by in a way remembering him, that he is memorable to her already, and and he remembers her, and it's just kind of like, I'm attending this meeting instead of her, and she's the prettier one. So like, it's just an interesting point to note that there's at least some potential there if you want to do it. Like, it's one of those things where like, ship it, but don't go overboard with it just yet. So here's what he says in regards to what information he got in Kavik. All right, so my contact in the past control office was able to get some time alone with the records. She doesn't find Kalyan's name in the approved section, but she finds a description. Water tribe man with 8 fingers, applying for exit out of Bin Ur. Destination to be decided, which is really rare. That's got to be him, right? She says the pass was granted around the last time you or I or anyone else heard from him. It's like you suspected. Your brother's gone. So, a few things here. They obviously highlight the idea that Kalyan only having 8 fingers is a very notable and sort of unique visual characterization of him. So they basically know that's him. But there is some weirdness surrounding this with regards to like, okay, so he got a pass out of Bin Ur, a rare thing as far as we're aware, but his name is not listed on it. And so, you know, it's kind of a weird aspect of what's going on in this. But it does seem to point out the fact that Kalyan left Bin Ur on his own. So it doesn't seem like funny business happened here and like Kavik has been like assassinated or kidnapped or something like that. He just seems like he left, but there's maybe a slight question about it. So interesting. We then cut to a little bit of a flashback here. It says Kavik, 12 years old. And it's just a very quick, like, one-page moment of basically the moment of Kavik and his family, including Kalyan, arriving on Bin Ur. So they've just made their passageway from the Northern Water Tribe, crossed the strait, and are landing here on Bin Ur, on Earth Kingdom soil. And it's meant to just highlight this kind of nice moment when the family was together and the connection between the brothers. We'll make the leap together, Kalyan said to him. If we do it, the spirits will keep us safe no matter what. And it does highlight here as well. Kavik grasps his brother's hand, his fist fitting neatly into the space left behind by Kalyan's missing ring and pinky fingers. So he's missing these 2 fingers on one hand. That's why he's described as having 8 fingers. So that will get explained later on in the book in an interesting way. So it's not just there to just be a random visual kind of thing. It's somewhat important, the fact that is here. So it's just they do this kind of 3, 2, 1. They jump off their kind of boat that they've kind of gone over on and make, you know, landfall here on the Earth Kingdom. And it's just this kind of idea of they're getting used to how different things are. Like the colors are slightly different here than what they're used to from the Water Tribe. Seeing all the work being done at the dock, because of course it's a trade port primarily, and so on. And Kavik just notes, maybe this new land wouldn't be so bad. He thought as a man in a heavy green uniform walked up to greet them. And it's sort of this sense of like, and it went downhill from there. And it continues on. We do a little bit of a kind of time skip here to early on. Kavik is working in Nukingak's, which is of course Nukingak and Partners, the sort of Water Tribe shop in Bin Ur, in the Water Tribe section. And it seems to be just this thing that, like, if you're a Water Tribe person and you come to Bin Ur, you work there. That's just the kind of go-to thing. He marveled at how steady the wages were, and he just compares the idea of how they made money in the north, which was basically by hunting, and how that was very much, it depended on what you got. So sometimes you could get the rare animal, make lots of money. Other times you might get the most minimal stuff, not make much. So he's kind of impressed with how sort of, you know for sure how much money you are getting. So that's very, very interesting. And he notes, he's liking it sort of initially here. But then it's noted, Kalyan stayed with Nukingaks for less than 6 moons. He hadn't shown any signs of dissatisfaction. He just failed to show up for his shift one morning. And we basically get this kind of description as we go through this of Kavik's memory of this, that this is his brother moving into becoming an errand runner. At Nukkingaks, Kavik heard the whispers about his brother. They used words like runner, lackey, spy. Kalyan started coming home less and less often. And he became very tight-lipped about what he was doing. And then here's the interesting point. He also gifted them an entire new house. Not forcibly, but forcefully. It was better to live closer to the international district, he said. And this is the full wooden house, 2 stories, the one that is noted by Yangchen as like, hey, you're a rich boy, like you live in one of the best houses in the area, and it was basically given to them by Kalyan. So obviously the idea is he's making a lot more money doing this errand running stuff than he was at Nukkingaks, which was already like quite good. So what's happening here? What happened to Kalyan to kind of put him down this path? And then it's noted, then one morning it happened. All the bookkeepers, clerks, and assistants were called to the shop floor. Someone with intimate knowledge of the client list and the timing of their contract renewals had poached their most critical customers. Many people were going to lose their jobs. And what happens here is that Kavik's father and Kavik keep their jobs when a lot of people around them as part of the community lose theirs. And everyone sort of immediately points the kind of like blame in a way at, Kavik and his family, because they assume, and it seems to be more or less confirmed here, that it was Kalyan who did this. So the person who poached this information, got the customers over to someone else, was Kalyan. So Kalyan betrayed the Water Tribe community. A big no-no for Water Tribe people. You don't betray your family or your other family, your community. And so this is why it's noted that Kavik and his family are sort of more isolated in a way from the Water Tribe community. They don't really speak ill of them, but they also don't interact with them that much. This was mentioned earlier on, like when the parents went to the door, when Yangchen was there, they thought that they have to really present themselves well to the other Water Tribe people because they don't have a good relationship here. Earlier on in this chapter, it's noted that Q was the closest thing he had left to a friend these days. Once the residents of the Water Tribe quarter stopped talking to him, his social circle had withered down to just his fellow miscreants in errand running. So we do learn here, I suppose, why the kind of Water Tribe people kind of turned on them. And it's because, Kalyan got his parents this really fancy house, better than most other people around, and then effectively did something that lost other people their jobs. So that is the problem here. And that also, I think, plays into part of why his parents they don't really want to talk about Kalyan and the idea of getting him back and stuff like that, because Kalyan effectively caused a lot of what's happening to them in a way. So interesting stuff. So he never came back after this. There was no doubt who was to blame for the incident, because Kalyan never came home again after that. After this, we find out that this was somewhat of a breaking point for Kavik, and he became the second person to voluntarily walk out of Nukkingaks. And this is him going down that path. He wanted to find out what happened to his brother, and he felt that the way to do that was to walk in his brother's footsteps. Because he again remembers that they arrived here in Bin together, and it was a memorable moment for him, and he now wants to be the one to, as it says here, Kavik would run errands just like Kalyan had. He would play the game and hunt down leads until he caught up to the former golden child of Long Stretch, and then he would drag him back home, kicking and screaming if necessary, so their family could leave this spirit-forsaken city the same way they arrived, together. So it's just highlighting that he wants to leave. He doesn't like Bin the family doesn't like Bin They all want to leave, but together. but Kalyan has obviously affected that dynamic, and Kavik is the one who's very focused on that, whereas the parents are sort of okay with letting it go because they don't want Kavik to get into trouble either, because they know what happened to their other son. So then we cut back to the more present day stuff, and it's just kind of highlighting that those were his lofty ambitions to sort of really quickly hunt down Kalyan, but in the years since, the reality of it is that he's been mostly running errands for someone who's not super amazing like Q. It's not super illegal either, but Q isn't exactly a mastermind here. So it's taken him this long to even just find out the basic information. Just that, he hasn't been able to, get all the information he needs quite quickly. So this is the sort of goodbye time, and it's just kind of like, Q, you see that they are friends, and he's just like, I'm sorry I don't have better information from you. I know Water Tribe families are close, so finding out that he did just leave is not a great thing. But then Kavik is like, what are you going to do with the lighter? Now that you have it. Okay, it's an avatar lighter. What's that going to do for you? And he's kind of like, same as Kalyan, I'm going to ditch the place. I know where I can get in touch with agents representing overseas buyers. They'll bring me to them. I'm aiming for Taku, which is one of the other Shang cities, the Earth Kingdom one, getting out of the cold for good. And he just says, give Kalyan my best if you ever see him again. And he disappeared into the street. And then we end with just Kavik's chances of reuniting his family melted away. He slumped in his seat and pressed his skull against the booth wall until it hurt. So, an interesting point for Kavik to just find out that, in a way, what he's doing here isn't necessarily like this rescue mission that he's maybe felt it might be. Maybe something happened to his brother and he'll be the one to sort of bring him back. Now he sort of knows that his brother kind of chose to leave, and sort of the reputation in a way that Kalyan developed for himself in the final days is sort of true, in that he kind of went against Water Tribe, tradition, the way you do things as a Water Tribe person. And it's kind of hitting home that was actually the truth. And it's this sense of like, okay, this thing that's driven Kavik for all this time, is he still going to go ahead with it? Or, because obviously in the middle of all this, you forget the last time we were with Kavik a few chapters ago, he was given the opportunity to join Yangchen. To his parents he said, join me as a companion, but effectively, I'll be your broker, you be my errand runner. And so it sort of opens the door to like, if this lead isn't going to go down the path he wants, then why not go all in with Yangchen when she's offering? So Kavik in an interesting spot at the end of this chapter. So really, really interesting stuff there for sure, just to find out more about, the reputation of the family within the community, explaining a few things like the houses, more on Kalyan himself, including the idea that, he has 8 fingers, the fun little family moment of them arriving, hopeful, but then the reality kind of coming true with what happened with Kalyan. Just a setup for like, because we're going straight away to Kavik and Yangchen meeting in the next chapter, so we'll see how things happen. Because the one thing you get from this chapter is kind of like, okay, what's the deal with the whole, Kavik saying, I picked you over the Avatar and she's a lot prettier. Like, so is he playing both sides here of like he's still doing deals for him, but he's not fully going all in with Yangchen, or what? That will be answered in the next chapter. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on chapter 14, The Trade. Other than that, that's been it. Thanks for watching, and bye.